We have now launched the online Shockwave course. When I set the company up, which is over 12 years ago now, which is hard to believe, I was always about educating the clinicians as well, not just in terms of the technology. So when Dom Smith came to me with this idea of doing the Shockwave course, I was all for it. And Dom and Katie have done a fantastic job of putting it together. It's really impressive, really comprehensive. It is technology agnostic, so whatever system you're using will be able to help you with this. So it's a brilliant piece of work. The guys have done really well. So check it out and go to the link below and let us know what you think.
Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Zoe Wilson, who is an MSK podiatrist and owner at ZW Clinics. So, Zoe, thank you for joining. Looking forward to hearing about you and your career.
Brill, can't wait. I'm looking forward to talking to you and hopefully sharing some insight into what I've done since qualifying.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we've not known each other long, but I really enjoy seeing your passion about the industry. And I think podiatry is one that I find really interesting in that I've not known a huge amount about it, and then like the chiropody link in all of those things. So I'm looking forward to getting more insight on that. But before we do, just talk to me. You're in a very nicely decorated room there. Where are you talking from?
So I'm speaking from my clinic today, which is in Kirkby Lonsdale in Cumbria. We've got 3 treatment rooms on kind of one level. And yeah, we're kind of a musculoskeletal focused practice, but we do a bit of everything here. So
Yeah. Oh no, really good. Really good. So are you from that area originally?
yeah, so I'm from Coniston in the Lake District. If you've ever been up to the lakes, sort of on holiday or a day trip, so very much in the sticks, in the middle of nowhere. And I grew up sort of on the fells, walking, running. It's a very active place that we live up here. So yeah.
And so what was it that made you want to go into this line of work?
Well, I wanted to be a vet originally. So when I first set out, I wanted to do surgery. I wanted to operate on animals, and I was fascinated in anatomy and just kind of the workings of not just the human body, I suppose, but really at the time it was more that, I loved animals and that was animal science was kind of my focus. And then I didn't get into vet school. So I got an interview and I was kind of going through that process. I got to like the second phase and then I didn't get in. And then the entry requirements changed again. And when I was younger, I sort of had, I was very sporty. I was kind of a county high jump champion, and I had a lot of pain with my feet when I was doing sport and athletics mainly, and I used to tape my feet up with electrical tape, and I was in agony. And I saw a podiatrist who changed my life. And I was like, oh, that's quite an interesting career pathway. And I went to see my podiatrist for a follow-up, and I thought, oh, he's got a degree in podiatry. And then I applied and got into Salford University to do my undergrad.
Right. So how did you end up at a podiatrist rather than say a physio or down that path?
So I went to my GP with my mum. My mum took me to my GP, and my GP referred me to an NHS podiatrist because it was foot pain. So kind of even then, which was, I'm trying to think how long ago that would be. Like 20 years ago, I suppose. Now, that's quite scary. And I was referred to an NHS podiatrist, and then that didn't help. And then I got referred to an orthopedic surgeon, and there was a bit of discussion around whether or not I would need surgery on my feet. And then I never saw a physio about any of the complaints that I had. I think because they were all to do with my feet. I didn't suffer with pain anywhere else. It was just my feet. So
Yeah, well, that's interesting. And then, so like roughly, just for people who aren't as familiar with it, then, so what is a podiatrist?
So a podiatrist is essentially an allied health professional that handles diagnosis and management of the foot and the associated structures. So we've been associated with chiropody, which is an interchangeable term to podiatry. And it kind of changed. I don't know how many years ago it was now, but the degree now it is podiatry. And it's such a great career because you're just so varied in what you can do. And I don't truly believe that there's a career that would fulfill that variation in the same way that podiatry does. You know, I mean, in first year, your corns, callus, nails. I mean, I nearly left in first year. I was like, I can't do this. This is not for me. I was always interested in biomechanics and the inner workings of the foot and the leg and things. And obviously there's that side of it. So the musculoskeletal side, you know, you can do anything from foot and ankle surgery to gait assessment to orthotics to ultrasound scanning now and injection therapy. So it's very varied career.
So at that point then in year one, when you were thinking, actually, this is not for me, like you do see some of the things on Instagram, it's like, yeah, it does look quite nasty on there.
Yeah.
So how close were you to actually thinking you wouldn't do it?
Crying going into lectures, like going on placement, crying all the way home, thinking I don't want to do this. I don't want to treat people who don't want to get better, some of them. You know, for me, it's always been like, how good can I get this person? Like, how good could they be? And I felt that when I was a student and I was seeing people coming back every kind of like 8 weeks for the same thing, there was no change in necessarily what we were doing as part of their pain and treatment plan. And I just felt so depressed about that. You know, there was a sort of deep kind of disappointment that this was going to be it. And then I looked into foot and ankle, into podiatric surgery. And that's when I went to do my master's in podiatric surgery and worked in surgical centres sort of across the UK. And that's where the interest for managing patients in that way, that's where that was really sort of developed.
Right. So then at what point within the undergrads did you start to think, actually, like, were you exposed to the MSK side of things from
Probably
like the
second year.
biomechanics?
Second year was kind of the time when we started to do that. And I think looking at what I've done with my career now and what we offer in clinic, you know, I was just saying to my business partner yesterday, like how variable our workload is. And I pride my staff's life that it's the same, that they've got variability. You know, one day they're doing nail surgery, the next day they're looking at a complex rear foot pathology, the next day they could be consulting somebody about an infection or a wound or, you know, heel pain that's stopping them from going to work and stopping them from being able to run. And that's their way of kind of, you know, getting out and enjoying life is running, and you can't do it because of foot pain. So, you know, I think it's important that all my staff feel that variability as well, because monotony can be challenging in a job, can't it? You know.
So does that tend to happen then, that people would be seeing a really wide scope of things?
Not always, and I think it's really important to find your fire in your profession. And if that is ingrown toenails, corns, verrucas that are very debilitating and painful, you know, we've got a colleague here who loves dermatology. You know, she loves verrucas, loves managing skin conditions. I don't love that. But for her, she goes on courses, she develops that side. And when those patients come to me, I think, well, actually, you'd be better suited seeing my colleague. You know, so it's empowering people with their own fire, like the thing that they really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what it was, but I've had 2 corns, and like the first time I couldn't believe how painful it is, but how amazingly easy it was when they the person got rid of it, it was like, that is amazing. It wasn't painful, and it was like straight away, it's like, my God, that's just gone.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of podiatry that's really unique, is that people can literally hobble into your clinic and they can walk out like the walking on air feeling. And that's not always, that is more or less never the case with MSK and musculoskeletal stuff. Like, it's not like that. See, I think when you manage a caseload, mine's 95% MSK. So it's like when you manage that caseload, you carry a bit of that they're not going to get better in 5 minutes. You know, it's going to take potentially 5 weeks or 5 months, you know, hopefully not 5 years. But it's, you know, ultimately there's not many jobs where I feel that you can actually deliver that instant pain relief. And, you know, an ingrown toenail or a corn like you had, you can do, you know, you can dig it out, get rid of it, pain's gone.
Yeah, no, it was really, really satisfying. Yeah, it was good, taking me back to that memory then. So like when were you in university then, did you have a pathway? Were you envisioning setting your own thing up at that point?
I'm not really a planner. I'm not a planner. I'm somebody who is quite instinctively impulsive. I would describe myself as. And I'm not saying like my success has been like a fluke, but I think there's an element of the way that I go about things that it's not really planned. I follow a passion. I kind of follow a pathway that in some way lights me up, and I think that's for me. So I didn't really have like a set path. I go with a passion, but I also do think that underneath that there probably is a little bit of a plan, but it's not something like is on paper. This is what I'm going to do by this time, and I'm going to achieve this by this point.
Yeah. So how did you end up doing the pediatric surgery route?
I just like surgery. I really like surgery. I like cadaveric courses, like chopping things open, basically. I love anatomy. Anatomy is just like anyone who's got like this foot on the desk, you know, because you can kind of see the inner workings of that. And I think one of the best things I've ever done is, you know, work in that environment where you can pull something and it moves something. And you're like, oh my God, you know, it's truly it's like a masterpiece, isn't it? The foot and the anatomy that's involved in that area. And, you know, surgery for me was also everything that you could do for a person. So if somebody comes in to see you, you could potentially offer them every treatment option. Now, I've not gone down that route as yet, so I'm not in a surgical training post, but I've done everything up to that point. And one of the restrictions with it is being somewhere that's kind of potentially close to where you live. So a lot of surgical centres are not close together for podiatric surgery, so they tend to be dotted all over the country. So I think that's why it's not happened for me yet. I've just not been in a position where it's happened yet, but I may still go down that route. You know, there's a lot of you're a long time working, aren't you? So
yeah.
you know.
So what sort of things could you do then from a surgical perspective?
Well, anything really. I mean, there's a lot of high risk foot surgery now. So some of those patients, if they've had a Charcot foot, for example, which is where they have an insensate foot from diabetes, so they can't feel the foot, and as a result of that, the bones can essentially disintegrate and collapse, and so we then end up with a foot that biomechanically has a protruding bone that then may cause a wound. So that could be shaved off and reduced, and so then the wound can heal. So that's an example. Bunions, of course, if you come across bunions, I'm sure you have, where the toe is kind of got that big bump on it and it's bending off at a right angle. So correction of those types of deformities. Tendon transfers for, say, a flat foot. So patients can literally have a tendon transferred to another part of the foot, so the foot functions differently. Fusions of joints. There's just so many things. There's so many things. Yeah. Anything.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And then, so you studied in Scotland for those ones.
Pardon?
You were in Scotland for you went up to, was it Glasgow, Caledonian? You did, what was?
Yeah, so we did the MSc, which is the theory in podiatric surgery. That was at Glasgow and Edinburgh. It was the two universities were joint. And then you can also do it at Huddersfield, theory of pod surgery. So those are the two main universities. But being honest with you, when I was looking at doing it, Glasgow got back to me straight away. Huddersfield did get back to me, but it was kind of a bit later on. So I decided to go up to Scotland, and I studied alongside working, which was not easy, but I'm a sucker for punishment. So I quite liked the study, the work, the managing the business, and how it also studying and then putting it into practice as well. So I was volunteering in a surgical unit for about 2 years. So every Wednesday I would go and either shadow theatre clinics, or I'd be on clinic doing injection therapy or nail surgery, or looking at scans, consulting patients for surgery. So that's kind of where I built up my ways of approaching MSK management. So I think I do think more surgically perhaps than some of my colleagues. So if patients come in and they want to ask me about surgery, or they want to say, I've had surgery, I feel that I can give them a little bit more perhaps because of that experience.
Yeah. So at what point then did you think that you wanted to do your own clinic?
Probably when I was at uni. Like I was always gonna do it. My family have got shoe shops, so I've worked since I was 10 years old. Do you know what I mean? So
Shoe shop, was that a coincidence that they got shoe shops?
no. They had clothing shops, and then they nearly went bankrupt, and they were like, we need to think of something else, because they basically were big companies they were dealing with, and then they set up down the road, so they nearly went bankrupt. And then they were like, we've got to think of something else. And it was actually before I went to uni to do podiatry, and they set up shoe shops, which are still going today. So we have a bit of a crossover of managing people and the feet, which it is a bit of a coincidence. Like, we're just a foot family, but we didn't mean to be.
Yeah, that is quite interesting that
Yeah.
you're all doing that. And so
Yeah.
when you actually set the clinic up, then like how did that come about?
I was working somewhere for 2 years, and I was working as a podiatrist. So I came straight out of uni, and I was managing a clinic. I was doing quite a lot of like ordering stock. I was making orthotics. I was seeing patients. I was just learning along the way. And then I just kind of thought, I've had enough of this. Like, I want to do my own thing. And it's, they were kind of saying, like, we need you to be faster in appointments. Like, we need you to be seeing a higher turnover of patients. And it just didn't sit with me. And I just thought, I'm learning more. Like, my appointments are going to get longer, which is exactly what's happened in my own practice. I'll spend 2 hours with someone if I need to. And at the time, my dad had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I was doing my master's, or just enrolled on my master's. And me and my mum basically had to get this building ready, because at where I was working, they just said, we don't, I got gardener's leave, and I was basically told, we don't want you kind of working here, because I think I was honest, I was setting up on my own. So literally, I wouldn't say I was on the street, but I didn't have a job and I didn't have any income. And I was like, I need to create a clinical space. So we got in a couple of builders, and me and my mum just painted and cleaned and for about 3 weeks, and got this space ready while my dad was very unwell.
Right. So that is the space that you're currently still in.
No, so I moved to the space we're in now about 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago this month, actually. And it was during COVID that I saw this. It's more of a health centre where we're at. You know, it's quite compared to where I was. I mean, we didn't have central heating in my first clinic. You know, it's freezing. You're putting jackets on between patients. And yeah, I mean, at the time it was like, oh, this is amazing. And then this came up and I just thought, I want to be there. And again, it was impulsive. You know, I drove past the clinic, it was an office at the time. And I just said to my partner, we're going there. And I rang the number on the wall and the guy turned up and that was that.
Right, that's good. Makes it easier as long as it works out. That's
Yeah, and I think you have to have an element of risk about you if you're going into any sort of business, any sort of practice. You've got to have that inner belief that what you're doing is going to work, and there's definitely a risk element to that, isn't there? I mean, you'll know that having your own business, you have got to be a little bit ballsy about stuff. You've got to be like, right, we're doing this and this is what we're going to do. So
yeah, it is. It changes. It can change for me anyway. It's like sometimes this is great, and then it's like, what am I doing that? But that is part of it. So like when you first went into that, then so like you say, you're having a really stressful time personally, and then you set that up. So what was that experience like when you set it up?
Just get on with it. You just get on with it. You know, my dad's still with us. He's no longer he's cancer free. But basically for 2 years he had a stem cell transplant. He's got 2 femurs that were replaced. Like half of his femur was replaced because he had metastases within the hip, the bone. So it wasn't a good picture. And he was very unwell and we nearly lost him a couple of times, you know. But like, you've still got to live. I think when it happens, and anybody that's been through any sort of health journey or had a family member that's been unwell, and I know some of my colleagues that are particularly inspiring, Emily Ball being one of them, has got a particularly interesting, she's got a very interesting story of how she kind of set things up and the challenges that she faced as well. And I speak to her a bit, but you know, when it happened, you just build a suit of armor and you've got to get on with it. You know, if you crumble, what's going to happen? I think there's something in the human body that just switches on and you just get on with it. So it wasn't easy, but you get on with it.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't. But like, was there any time where you thought I shouldn't be doing the business piece of it?
No. No. I
That's
don't
good.
remember that. I don't remember that. But you're in a bit of a trance. I don't know how to best describe it. It's got to work. Survival, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, it literally is. And then, so for when you were doing it, did you have a vision that, from the answers you said before, you tend to be a bit more like you can just see where things go? But did you have any sort of picture of what you want it to look like, the feel of it?
Yeah. So when I used to work in a boot fitting shop when I was a teenager before I went to uni. So we used to get people coming in with all sorts of foot problems that we needed to fit them in a walking boot. And I always said I'm going to have this place and I'm going to call it Foot and Shoe. And I don't really know why. I don't even know. I mean, I've not called it that, obviously. It's a bit of a crap name. But yeah, like I just wanted everything under one roof. I wanted people to come in and have their feet done, but also be able to get shoes and also come in with maybe knee arthritis and be able to get some treatment or something really weird that they've not had anybody be able to approach in a certain way before. and I wanted them to be able to do that in one place. So that was sort of the goal. And I think it's really funny. I was quite young when I decided that that's what I thought would be a good idea. And I think we tend to follow our intuition, don't we? We might say that we don't, but I think ultimately you follow what kind of is sort of deep within you, and you end up at that eventual destination most of the time.
Yeah, if you got your core beliefs, then that's what you naturally gravitate to. Yeah, wouldn't because your parents were doing the same thing. Were you
Yeah.
thinking that would be good or bad to be in the same building as your parents doing shoes, or would that have driven you mad?
Mm. That probably would do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my mum's the face of the business now. My dad's sort of retired now, so he has a bit less involvement. But yeah, I mean, I think when your parents have had businesses and you've seen your parents go through the really crap side of business, the really sort of, my dad used to have an outdoor shop, and he would sit there sometimes in the winter in the Lake District, make nothing. Nobody would come in. He'd make nothing. But he still went to work every day, froze to death, uh, waiting for customers to come in. And I think that sort of working, that working mentality has always been, in me. But yeah, I think they've inspired me a lot, my parents.
yeah. No, it is really good to hear. And like in terms of like actual skills other than perseverance and like work ethic, like what else have you learned from them in terms of the business of running businesses?
I think just the way that I think tenacity is the right word. They just kind of get on with it. They're faced with challenges and they find a way to work through it, because you've got a family to provide for. You've still got to put food on the table. You've still got to pay your mortgage. All of these things that have to happen as part of running a business. And ultimately, when I set the clinic up, my intentions were to help people, despite doing okay in business. I think the burning desire to help people, and then maybe have a little bit of business like knowledge is a good thing to have in unison. But yeah, definitely when there's challenges, they just worked through it. Like, you have to work through it. And there's times where they went bankrupt probably more than once. I mean, I think maybe 2 or 3 times where they could have easily just given up, and a lot of people would give up, but they didn't. So I think that's what I've learned, yeah,
Yeah.
from
What
that.
was that like for you when that they're going bankrupt then?
I didn't really know much about it. I know more about it now. I didn't know much about it at the time. Um, my dad's always had health challenges. Bless him. He's had a lot to cope with, as my poor dad. Um, but he, where I didn't maybe have a close relationship with him when I was younger, he's like my superhero now, because of the way that he faced cancer, really, and the way that he got me through that and all of us through that. And he doesn't look at it that way. But as a a child in that situation, or your dad, you see what your dad does and goes through in that situation, and it's very inspiring. I think your parents have a big role to play in that.
Yeah, yeah, you only get two, don't you, realizing normally. And
Yeah.
it's massive. It is interesting when you reflect on it. And yeah, they will drive you up the wall at times and things, but fundamentally you learn so much from that experience, don't you? I was out with it's the first time we've done it, like me, my brother, mum and dad. Normally there's like my brother's family, like my side as well. But the four of us together, and it's just I do slip back into the same dynamic of he's my big brother, and he's like going back in time almost. You could be going back to when we were driving to France, and you still dad will still be telling me what to do, even though I've run my business for 13
Yeah.
years. I'm looking at houses, and it's like I still feel like I've got to get approval sometimes on
Oh
things.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
good. Oh, I'm glad
100%.
you agree with that.
Oh no, like I'm not, my partner's one of four boys, and to some extent he's different to me. I seek approval a lot from my parents. Like I'll go to them for guidance, and I'll be like, Dad, I don't know how to do this, or so I think you still go to your parents, right into adulthood, and like you say, you kind of go back to that dynamic. But you also want to make them proud, don't you? You want to
Yeah,
make your parents proud of you because they've given so much of themselves to you, which you
yeah.
don't realize until you get older, I think. But you think, God, they gave up so much for me and made my life so, you know, full as a young person. So it's
Mm.
nice to give back, isn't it?
No, it is. It is. And again, even if you get a sense of irritation, it's like, what are you doing? Let's just breathe. Let's not go
Yeah, just
into it
breathe.
because it's like I'm sure I'm really annoying to them. So but yeah, it's interesting that the family dynamic, isn't it? Is like you just for me anyway, straight back into those roles. And even though you're a real adult, it's like sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But again, I wouldn't change it. We've got a great relationship. I love it. It's interesting, isn't it? And you just got to make sure. Fortunately, Gabby, my fiance, they get on really well. Like you do need to have people that buy into that type of people that are fully immersed in that lifestyle.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
no, it's good. And then like you mentioned Emily there as well, like you seem to be really connected. Like how important to you is collaboration? I know you do stuff with Nick Knight.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be where I'm at without the people in this profession and in other professions. There's so many people that I could mention that have been inspirations to my journey. And when I do a presentation now, because I do a little bit of speaking and stuff at conferences and what have you, and I'm very passionate about, improving the profession as much as I can while I'm here and as much as I can while I'm got a lot of energy. I want to put that into the profession as much as possible. I think it's my duty in some respects as a sort of newer member of the profession. But I do a slide now in my presentations, and it's called Inspirations in Podiatry. Maybe not just podiatry. I should maybe make it Inspirations in Health, because they're not all podiatrists. But there's people that just, Trevor Pryor. I mean, it's a bit cringy because I now get to work with Trevor, which is amazing, like just a dream come true. But when I was a student, I knew about Trevor, and I was like, I wonder if I'll ever get to meet him, like stuff like that, like proper fangirling over certain people. Um, you know, and you've got to have those people that inspire you. You've got to think they've done that. How do I forge my path? That satisfies me. And if I'm not satisfied, what can I do to fulfill, my place in the profession? And some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. We're always, there's always going to be people who might kind of, I don't know the word, put themselves out there a bit more and, have a deep desire to improve the profession and how it's delivered and etc. But no, I wouldn't be where I'm at without the people that I truly respect. And there's so many of them, like literally hundreds probably.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's just good, isn't it? Because like you were saying before about like, what are your motivations? Yes, we all need to make money, we need to exist and all of those things, but it doesn't have to be deeper than that. Some people just want to make money and that's fine as well. But it's like having
Mm.
something where you've got something compelled to collaborate or to improve, drive things forward, innovate, whatever it may be. That's the
Mm.
real thing that makes you get up early,
Yeah.
sit in a shop when it's freezing cold or whatever it is. That's I think you do need that side of things.
Yeah, and like my uncle, well, he's not like my uncle, it's my mum's cousin, but basically he's a lower back specialist in Canada, and his name is Stuart McGill. So some physios and maybe yourself have come across the McGill method. I've got his book here, actually. It's on my shelf.
Oh, wow.
But I was speaking in Canada last year, and I went to visit him, and I've not seen him for a number of years. And I said to him, what got you into what you're doing? Like, what, you know, I mean, he goes all across the world and everything. And he sort of has built like a self-help guide for patients with back pain and trains other people to help people, you know, help the many, not the few kind of thing. But he said, I just wanted to understand the spine. He just said, I just wanted to understand exactly how it worked, piece by piece, the whole thing. You know, and yeah, he did a PhD and became a professor at the university and all of that. But ultimately, that goal started with like the passion of the anatomy and how that forms function and pain. And for me, I was like, that's kind of what I've done as well. It's like, why does this foot hurt? Why does it hurt for this person and not this person? And you know, he's been a big inspiration of mine as well, you know, even though he is a family member. But whether there's something in the blood, I don't know, you know, that we want to do that. He's gone for the next, well, it's equally complicated structure, and you know, and mine's the foot. So you know, he's been a really big inspiration of mine outside of podiatry.
Yeah, that is amazing that he is in the family. Definitely didn't know that one. But I think having that drive to do something, it's like, it does depress me when I see, when I might have to ban Happy Friday. Sometimes people put it on our internal group, and I'm like, we're not saying that. I love a Friday. I do love a Friday, but it's like, I just find it depressing when people are saying, oh yeah, it's on Monday. It's just like, how depressing if that is how you feel. You've then got 5 days, you know, if you're looking at the normal period of life, you're actually dreading what you're doing. Yeah. And it's like everyone will have something, whether it's the spine, the foot, or whatever it is, a mat tech, whatever it is that you're doing. Try and find something that you're actually really into doing, and then you'll probably be quite good at it as well normally.
Yeah, and I think like going to spend time with people, you know, and you know, sort of moving on to another subject really, but it's fine, you know, when I do any sort of discussions or talks or anything about my practice and how that's kind of, you know, forged its way into podiatry and whatever, I always say to people, you know, just find your fire, just find your passion, you know, and if that passion is talking to people, or that passion is puzzle, you know, understanding how to work out a puzzle, you know, the human body is very much a puzzle, you know, and I think if you've got somebody who wants to problem solve and things like that, you know, it's a really great profession. It might be footwear, you know, the way that the industry is in footwear now, things are just going like this at such a fast rate. You know, you could get into that. And again, there's lots of opportunities now for people in industry. It doesn't have to be in the clinic room, does it? You know, you could train as a podiatrist or a physiotherapist or, you know, a sports doc or whatever it is. And you might decide that, you know, I don't really want to do the patient facing thing. I want to use my knowledge in another field. So I know lots of people who have gone into the industry, you know, working in industry, you know, kind of doing the types of things that you do, and they might be a clinician. So I think there's lots of different ways that you can find that fire. I don't think it has to be in a clinic room. I mean, mine's public speaking. I just really like speaking. I really like talking to people and understanding where their passions come from. That's what I really enjoy doing. I also like a really complex rear foot, but you know.
Talk about that. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Combine them. Yeah, but that is you're right. If you could find something that you really enjoy doing, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do admin or you don't have to do other things. But it's when you find something that you're into, It's like, I agree with you. Like we're recruiting for clinicians in our role because I think it is important that when we're speaking to clinics like you, we need to understand what we're talking about and how does this all fit into it. And I think it's really exciting with the technology piece, but it's got to be integrated. It's not like, all right, here we go. We're just some company trying to flog you a shockwave ultrasound, whatever it may be. It's like, look, how are we planning this for the duration of how long you want your clinic to be there? What's next? How do we push it all together? So I think doing it collaboratively is really important. And I think it's been done in pockets, but I think there could be more of it. And that's what I'm passionate about, is bringing people together. How do we do this? And just doing it as a team rather than it being, oh, right, yeah, let's prices or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, we can figure that bit out, but let's make sure we're right on this bit first.
I think what you're doing is brilliant. You know, I mean, when I started talking to you, I knew of you, but I didn't really know you, and what your goals were and intentions. And, you know, I've always been passionate about companies that provide a good service, that educate, that get the right information across, and ultimately that the equipment, whatever it is given to the right individual for the right reasons, you know, and that is basically what you're trying to do, is bring all of that together. And I almost feel like I've been screaming in my head for the past 9 years, like, why are we not bringing this together in some way? You know, it's really important, really, really important that people know what they're doing, why they're doing it, who they're doing it for the right reasons, as evidence informed or evidence based as possible. So I think what you're doing is exactly that, which is, you know, the best way to help improve the quality of care and the services that we can offer to people.
Yeah, well, no, thanks for that. That is what we're trying to do, is like we're trying to do it collaboratively, and we definitely don't have all the answers, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? You're trying to work out, and the answer's either ever right. Who knows? It's difficult to ever get to a definitive side of things. Like we were talking before about like the perception of when people come into the clinic, like you've obviously got a lovely space there. And like how important is that to you, of having a space, whether it's with tech or with the way it looks, with the team, all of that from your side?
I mean, literally everything from the waiting area to the toilet, I'm thinking about what can I do to make that space good. You know, in the toilet, I'm going to tell you, we've got a piece of artwork that was painted by somebody locally of the foot and ankle in all its complexity. And what it is basically is a piece of artwork that formed the logo that we have. So this logo that we've got on things came from a painting, you know, a pencil drawing that somebody drew for me. So that's what that piece of artwork is. In the waiting area, we've got books on mental health, how gardening can help with mental health. We've got a book on all the farms in the area, and people come in, you know, and we've got magazines and we've got stuff like that. But if there's something that someone could read that changes their life just for that day, you know, we've got a book on how to do a joyful thing in 5 minutes. You know, so I just think, you know, you don't know what people are going through. And I think if you make the space nice and you make it presentable, but also it has a bit of meaning. I mean, that's the extent that I want a library in there so people can come in, you know, and they have coffee and they feel looked after.
That, yeah.
Yeah. So I like people to have a full experience when they come to see us. It's not just about treatment. It's not just about gold standard, whatever, you know, the treatment pathway they need to be on. It's about feeling like they're in a safe environment as well.
Yeah, like a caring one and a community one is like you that's what you're building, because a lot of people will be scared of coming in, even if they know you. It's like a bit of anticipation and so on. And if you sat there having a coffee, it's nice, isn't it? That actually becomes an experience rather than a clinical in and out whatever. So no, that sounds really good. It might, even if you don't need treatment, you might just come and read a book there.
Yeah, I mean, we because we're quite rural and we have an elderly population, we get couples kind of coming together, and so the partner will sit and speak to the admin team, and they'll have a really kind of just like a day out, and make it as pleasant as possible.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good because they can be quite clinical, some of this stuff, and having that community-based things I think is really important.
Yeah.
So that's really good. I'll look forward to when you get the library installed and we can get
Yeah,
it on there.
it's
And
building.
then, like you mentioned, like you get it's all consuming that, and I know that like with your partner, he's involved in the business. Like, how is that from your perspective? Like, how do you switch off?
You don't. You know what? I don't. I don't switch off. There's no point in me not being honest. If I come on something like this, I'm not. I'm always honest. And the truth of the matter is, I don't. I've always got ideas. If I have time off, with like a holiday, I genuinely just think of, right, what's the next idea, and I'm sat there ruminating over an idea. And it's probably not like a healthy way to be. And uh, I find ways of, the gym is my kind of place where I can switch off. And also when I play golf, because golf is so complex and there's so many things that can impact the strike of a ball. And for me, that is like my way out of work. And I suppose that's the only time that I can switch off. But I'm still checking emails, like I'm still coming up with ideas. Some of the best ideas I've ever had are when I'm on holiday or I'm lying in bed and I can't sleep.
What's your best
So
idea then? That is,
best idea. I don't know really. I've got loads of ideas in the pipeline that I've not shared with anyone. So
yeah. Well, I won't put you on the spot for that. We'll come back for those ones when they come to fruition. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And how do you feel? How do you feel about not switching off?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think at some point, like, I do want to have a family and do all of that. And I think that when there's other things to occupy me that have a higher importance, then, I will be able to come away. And I think we're almost preparing the workspace for me. If something did happen and I wasn't here, it could still run. And we're always working on improving that. Because I like to go away and play golf. I'm going to Portugal in like 2.5 weeks, but I'll be playing 7 days of golf every day. It's like a competition. So it'll be intense and I won't really have a lot of time for work. So you've got to put preparations in place when you're not there. Um
Well, that's just a holiday, isn't it? But yeah, just being able to take a holiday. But yeah, I agree with you. It's very difficult when you're away, and it's sometimes you don't want to switch off. Like my team
mm,
will say to me, just right, go off and don't do it, and it's just sort of like, well, yeah, we'll see
it's
about
so
that. But
uncomfortable.
it's yeah, it's nice, but it's first day or 2 days, there's no chance for me. But I think I do ease into it.
It's like when someone says, like, what do you like about yourself? And you just like, I don't wanna have this conversation. Or if someone pays you a compliment, and I've listened to a really good lecture at Emily Ball's conference actually, and there was this amazing woman, and I can't remember her name. Her name was Adele, but I can't remember her surname. And she is a teacher, and she's a TED Talk speaker, and like really amazing, really inspiring. And she was saying, like, so many people in our society don't know how to accept a compliment. If someone says to you, oh, like, I like your jumper, Andy, do you know what I mean? And you're just like, oh, this old thing, and you kind of bat it off, and there's a really fine line of accepting a compliment, you know, or running with a compliment, or just batting a compliment off. You know, I think it was just really interesting. Those things that make you feel uncomfortable are
Yeah.
usually the things that you need to work on. And I
Mm.
think I'm not good at, can't rest, I can't relax, really. And I think those are the things we need to work on. If it's uncomfortable, they're usually the things that we're not very good at.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think British people particularly are quite bad. I always go, oh yeah, not bad. Yeah, yeah. So it's okay. Yeah, it's good. It's like there can be quite a lot of playing down of things or it. What about like fear and like how big a part does that play for you in terms of imposter syndrome or any type of fear?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a really big problem with a self-confidence, self-belief. I put myself down a lot. I still do. I still have a real battle with imposter syndrome. And, you know, it's good to be truthful that my exterior might be, oh, she's this confident, like she's got it all figured out kind of exterior, but it's not the truth. You know, there's a really kind of interesting visual that I think about where you see a swan going across the lake and you think, oh, they look so elegant. And then underneath their feet are doing this. And I think that that is the reality of a lot of people who, you know, they are creative or entrepreneurial or whatever the description is. They're not high performers, but you know what I mean? Like people who want to push it and things. I think there's always something that has made them do that. And it's usually some sort of adversity that's gone on in their life. And, you know, for me, I just think, you know, I had a bit of a tough time at school and, you know, stuff like that. And that doesn't go away. You know, that person sits on your shoulder like all the time. But I think that's why I'm driven and why I achieve things and why I can help others as well, because I'm not really that confident.
Yeah, well, you definitely wouldn't think that, like from our interaction. So it is. Thanks for sharing it because it's not always easy, but I think it is. It's good to do it because the reality is, probably everyone will be at some point. Like literally every day. We were at an event last week for a book launch in London, and the one of the guys spoke
I
and
saw
just
that.
it was
Yeah.
great. It was really good, but it's all
You with
talking
some of
about
my
these topics.
friends.
Who was there that you know then?
So Darren Finnegan
Yeah.
and basically the NEMS guys, the
Oh, right, like
from the
Steve
northeast.
Miller.
Yeah, Steve. Shout out to Steve. Love you,
Yeah,
Steve.
he's good. Steve used to live around the corner from me, so I used to give him a few foot injuries actually, so he probably would have come and seen you. But yeah, no, Steve's a great lad. He's really really good.
Sorry,
Um,
you were saying there's
yeah,
such a
no,
good
no,
group there.
it just really it was like, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And it's like that's a question that had been asked to me before from someone I work with from a coaching perspective, and it does kind of hit you. It's like, God, yeah, because like you really, I'll be fearful or afraid. It's like you're running away from something or you're running towards something, and acknowledging it, like you said, there is really important because it's like at least then you can deal with it or be aware of it or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I think, you know, we all go through mental battles. You know, it's difficult not, you know, to say that people are not suffering in their lives, and you can't always see it, you know. And I think it's really important for people, as uncomfortable as it feels, to be upfront about that. You know, and for me, it's a constant improvement. It's like, how can I improve myself today? You know, what can I do to improve my health? You know, I can go to the gym, or I could eat something a bit healthier today, or I could read a book and improve my language, my vocabulary. You know, I think, you know, it's great to have those little milestones that make you feel better about yourself, and you know, I think that's
yeah,
important.
definitely reflecting on what you've achieved, like great clinic, built a team up, speaking with Trevor Pryor. You know, he said that what you'd have now to yourself 20 years ago, you'd be like, oh my God, I've made it. But then now you're like, what else am I doing? Was this it? What, I'm not doing that. I should be doing that or whatever. So,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, I think there's always an element of what's next, and how do you solidify what you've got, and how do you make a resilient environment for your life? So that might be your home, it might be your job, it might be your team, it might be family, your health, your routine, whatever it is. So, but I think it's important to remember that there's times where you weren't that strong, and that you've got to look how far you've come sometimes. Whether that's from working for somebody and doing like a domiciliary business. You've moved from working for somebody to managing your own caseload. That's a massive step. People might not look at it that way, but it's a huge step when you start to make those changes. It might be that you came in on a Monday morning and you felt a little bit more positive. And whether that was a lie to yourself because you don't like Mondays, you did it. And for me, there's a time where I didn't like Mondays. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd come in and be like, oh, God's sake, not sitting on my sofa, I'm not going to play golf. I'm here. But I started to ignore that thought process, and I kind of thought, you know what? I'm going to go in. I'm going to enjoy the morning. I'm going to have a coffee, and I'm going to be really upbeat. And the things that probably I don't feel all the time on a Monday morning. But it's like little changes like that can make a big difference in the long run, and how you approach the challenges.
Yeah, I think it is. It's perspective. You can look at something, whether it's good or bad, and what you get to do rather than what you have to do, and changing the mindset. I'm definitely a believer in that. Don't get me wrong. I am in stinking mood sometimes. It's not like I'm singing and dancing. Although that's what my fiance, she's like, oh, it's like Christmas every morning with you, and it's like, it's not all the time, trust me. But it's naturally, I think you can look at it in a way that you want to view things. And so what would your advice be for whether it's someone looking to get into the profession or someone looking to set their own clinic? Like, what would your, say, future leaders or clinicians, what would your advice be?
See, I get asked this a lot, and I think one of the things that I was not good on was the stuff that I've just discussed. Like, I wasn't good at looking how far I'd come and remembering that actually you've got quite a lot of time. You don't need to do like everything in a year. I'm probably not the best example of that because I try and do a lot, all at once. But I think I'd always say to somebody, whether they'll take the advice or not, because it's not that easy to implement. It's another habit to implement, isn't it? But like, write down what you've achieved, even if it's like in a week or a month. The lists that you make of those positive steps, I think, accumulate maybe a bit of a belief about yourself. And the more you practice things, it's a bit like mindfulness, isn't it? I mean, I was never any good at mindfulness, but it was part of some sort of therapy that I had at one stage. I was rubbish at it. Couldn't do it for like 5 seconds. And then I did it for 10 seconds. And then I did it for 30 seconds. I was like, hang on a minute, I've got a bit of a hang of this. And then I actually praised myself for being able to do it, and that might be telling somebody else, oh, I've done this and I'm really proud of myself or whatever. But I think it's just like not rushing things, making sure that you write down those milestones and ingrain them, because I think you quite quickly forget, and before you know it, your career's, trundling along quite quickly. So I think it's being kind to yourself as well, and it's just looking at, you know what, you've done all right. You've done pretty well.
Yeah.
That'd be my advice. And also, reach out to people. I'm really happy to speak to anybody, have anybody in my clinic. if I've got the busiest day of my life, you can still come and shadow. Like,
Yeah.
that would be my advice to people.
Yeah. Brilliant. No, look, I appreciate it. Thank you for being so candid
What
and
would be
honest.
your advice? I want to know what your advice would be to somebody.
Well, I would ask that question normally, but a friend of mine has put that on LinkedIn today, so I was intrigued to hear your answer on it. I think, because I actually think I've got a lot of similarities to you. Where did I have a plan? I knew I wanted to have my own business, so I was intrigued by that. I think it's trying to figure out not just what you're passionate about, because like, am I passionate about shockwave ultrasound? Not really, but I'm passionate about doing really improving things, pushing things forward, and giving good solutions and a great service. Like the very basic thing for me is I want us to be a great company to work for. So I love my team, and then a great company to work with. So I think it's finding things, and you mentioned the point as well, for find things that you enjoy doing, like find things that you enjoy doing that you can do, and you naturally tend to be quite good at doing things that you're good at and you enjoy doing. So I think it's try and find those things which you can find within any job. I think pretty much you can find out a different aspect of it. Be positive about things, always look for the opportunities, not moaning about things, like look for those things, speak to people. Definitely agree with you on that. And I think someone said to me about selling though, who's good at sales, and it's like, for me, you just got to believe in what the thing is that you've got. You've got to listen to people, and then you've got to literally just follow through. So that the bit about consistency, I think it's really simple on it. It's just believe in what you're doing. So get something that you're really behind. Understand people, genuinely listen to them, and then actually just be consistent. So I think it's really simple things, and just doing them. But I guess the main thing for me is that look for opportunities and be positive, because if you do that, stuff comes up all the time. And if you're moaning, like as soon as someone's moaning, it's just like, who wants to hang out with those people?
And we can all be like that. We can all be negative Nellies sometimes. But if I'm like that, I just go to the gym, because I'm not like a good person to be around. And I know that if I have a coffee or I go to the gym or do both of those things, that I'm a much nicer person to be around. You know, I'm not a positive person. I wouldn't say, like, 100% of the time. I'm not that person that wakes up like, woo,
I
let's
don't
go.
think no one is though, really, are they? And if you are, it's not that's not standard, or for everyone will have down points. But yeah, I think it's knowing, being aware of it. That self-awareness piece is massive. Yeah, God, I'm being a right knob here. I need to just get my head out of this. You know when you're doing it, don't you? It's like, I'm really being awful. Just like, let's get out of this bit, or snap out of it. And it's that awareness piece.
And for me, it's either talking to like one of your favorite people, you know, one of like my best friend, Jamie is called, he's a pharmacist actually. So he sort of has a bit of an understanding of, you know, if you've had a bit of a crap day in a clinical environment. But like, I know that when I spend time with him, you know, I just feel like that time is very valuable to me. And I always feel better when I've spent time with him. So it's like, you've got people, you've got activities, food, you know, like there's things that, you know, that if you sort of compile them, that generally it you know, you have a sort of better mood. But I think it's unrealistic to say like that you're always going to be that, you know, positive person. You've got to be, there's ebbs and flows, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what makes the good bits good. If you were just up all the time, it wouldn't be the case. Daily basis, it can be, oh, this is amazing to, it must be easy to just go and get a job or just go and do that. Well, you will have those things. And that I know that's just a mental thing that I go through on it. But it's like, again, a lot of it is from like the stuff that me and my brother would slate my parents for, asking for stuff. go and getting photos with celebrity, doing that stuff. Like, they're very dynamic people, but I know I'm turning into them. Like, even now, like, asking for my coffee extra hot, like Gabby's just ripping me, just like, because my dad used to do it and we were like, oh, shut up, dad. But now I'm like, no, I want my flat white extra hot. So you are a product of the environment,
You're
but
a
it's like
madman.
it's like embracing it as well. It's like, look, this is what I am, and being authentic to me that's like a key thing, really, is like, be who you are, and good stuff tends to happen on it. And again, be honest, be open, and it's the people that do try. And I think that is a problem in the medical world, is the number of places that I'll go into, and it's people have got their arms crossed, they're not interested, they're not engaged with it. And it's like just being a bit more just open-minded and looking for opportunities rather than for things to tear down. It's like, be a bit more like that. I'm not saying you've got to be skeptical still. I think that's good. Be challenging, but in a healthy, positive way.
Yeah, and there are clinicians who are approaching things completely differently. I mean, there's Dave O'Sullivan, who you might have come across, and I was speaking next to him at the NEMS conference, and the way that he approaches patients is just completely different to what you're taught. And he's had a lot of experience, worked as like a World Cup rugby physio, amazing guy. I mean, if people listening to this are not aware of what he does, like, unbelievable human being, has achieved a lot, but is now also looking at how he approaches managing patients more as empowerment. It's actually, you can get bogged down with managing patients if your outcomes are not as quick as you'd like them to be, or you reach a bump in the road. And I think, I mean, I spending time with some of these guys, and it was the NEMS conference where I met them, has actually come into my treatment room now, and the way that they're approaching patients with empowerment, and look what you have achieved, look how far you have come, look what you can lift. And that's changing how patients perceive our services, becoming a bit more of a lifeline than maybe just, I'm just going to get my feet looked at, or I'm going to get some exercises, or I think having that relationship with your patient and empowering them is a new, for me, it's a newer concept, but very interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, it is very interesting where it is, like, certainly in the private sector now, is that's they're having to pay for this stuff as well. So people do expect more, which is good. How do we raise the value of the whole industry and expectations? That's good. If people do value it more, they want more, great. That means we can invest more, develop it more, not just in tech or, having a nice painting or whatever. It's the whole thing of the quality of the clinician that understands these skill sets, because I don't think that is taught that at all, if anything, really. So I think it is really good, but it goes back to that, look at what you can do rather than ooh. It's just like, as soon as anyone does that, you just sort of like, they lose me. I like, if I'm in it having a treatment or something, I like it to be focused on what I can do, but especially just understanding what that particular person responds best to
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, I appreciate that. That was good. Thank you for throwing the question back to me as well in there. But yeah, brilliant. Appreciate your time, Zoe. That was great. Thank you for being so open and honest. And I shall look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy.